While I'm still polishing my thoughts for my MCU ranking, might as well talk about the Marvel animated features since I finished watching all 8 films and also I need to make some YouTube money and it's been a while since I uploaded a full-length video. Anyways, if you don't know what M.A.F is, it was a series of 8 animated films made by MLG Productions, which was a joint venture of Marvel Studios and Lionsgate Entertainment. It all started with the Ultimate Avengers 2-parter and ended with Thor: Tales of Asgard. This video will be a review of the 8 films in release date order, and I'll be quickly ranking them by the end of this video. With that out of the way, let's begin with... Based on The Ultimates by Mark Millar, this film follows Nick Fury assembling a team of superpowered individuals to stop an alien invasion. Sound familiar? Well, that's because it is pretty much an early prototype of the MCU's Avengers, even borrowing a lot of key beats, though without the same payoff. While the story hits similar notes as the live-action version, since they both have the same source material, or inspired by the same source material, this film suffers from the limitations of these early animated movies. Rough visuals, a rushed pace, and not enough time to flesh out the characters. It tries to give the team depth, but it never fully lands since the members only have 1 or 2 personalities. Steve is broody, Tony is quippy, Bruce is sad, Janet is supportive, even if Hank's a bitch. There's even a dramatic Avengers breakup that gets resolved in like 5 minutes before the final battle. I remember enjoying this as a dumb kid, but on rewatch as a still dumb young adult, it just felt bland and awkward. Aside from some decent ideas, this film didn't hold up. This picks up right where the first left off, throwing the Avengers into Wakanda to fight the Chitauri again, this time with Black Panther in the mix. And honestly, this was a better time than the first. The characters feel more developed, or at the very least, less annoying. Cap has some actual inner conflict now, dealing with PTSD through war flashbacks, and gives him more dimension. Black Panther is a solid addition, even if he doesn't really grow as a character. And Bruce Banner, despite being locked up most of the time, gets a surprisingly well-written arc about guilt, fear, and being treated like a monster. The writing really leans into his suffering, and it works. Plus, Hank dies, so that's the point. Overall, not an amazing film, but a decent improvement over the first. This film follows Tony Stark going to a similar origin story to his then-in-production MCU counterpart, but features Mandarin as the main villain and having a magic versus machine aspect wrapped around the whole thing. Let me get my thought out of the way. I don't like this film. I think it is a bland take on the Iron Man character and his mythos. One of the reasons why I love Tony as a character, especially the MCU version, was his journey from a jerk billionaire weapons manufacturer playboy to a selfless superhero. This Tony goes to the same story as that version, but what this Tony lacked is an arc. Way before this film even began, Tony already had his suit of armors. Yes, that's plural. And also, Howard is still alive in the story, and both got issues that are not compelling at all. Mandarin and the rest of the elemental warrior statue thingies were boring-ass villains, offering nothing but physical conflicts to Tony and nothing else. Say what you will about Trevor or Aldrich, but at least they are not as forgettable as this Mandarin. I'm torn between giving this film a 4 out of 10 or a 5 out of 10, but I decided to give it a 3 out of 10. This film is boring, it's a complete waste of my time, and also had the worst animation of the entire M.A.F. that I've seen. In this origin story, Stephen Strange, a brilliant but arrogant surgeon, loses the use of his hands in a brutal car accident. Desperate for healing, he journeys to Kamar-Taj, where he trains in the mystic arts and slowly transforms into Sorcerer Supreme, eventually facing off against the dark entity Dormammu. Plot-wise, this film, similar to Invincible Iron Man, shares a lot of similarities with the MCU version, and I would even argue that this film is just like the MCU version, beat by beat. It's definitely more of a character study than an action-heavy superhero flick, but that actually works in its favor. The animation, even if it's very limited, feels stylized and trippy, fitting the mystical vibe. And Strange's arc from egotist to protector is handled with surprising depth. It's not packed with spectacle or huge set pieces, but it doesn't need to be. This film is short, but takes its time and actually builds its protagonists in a meaningful way, even if the side characters feel more like tools for Strange's development than actual people. But overall, it's still a solid film. I've seen a lot of people liking this film, but I couldn't connect well with it. In this story, the Avengers' children take up their parents' mantles after Ultron wiped out the whole team and also conquered the entire world. Besides Ultron, who I think was menacing, the rest of the cast was just bland. They're your typical annoying children who drives the plot forward due to their misadventures and for being a complete dick. I think there's an interesting angle that they went with the original Avengers here. Both Bruce and Tony were serviceable for this story, and I just think that this what-if story was handled pretty good. The idea of Ultron defeating the Avengers sounds absolutely sick on paper, and while I don't fully feel the threat or even dread due to this being more of a lighthearted adventure, I still think that this was a fun enough ride. This animated film is split into two standalone segments, Hulk vs. Wolverine and Hulk vs. Thor. In the first, Wolverine is sent into the Canadian wilderness to stop the Hulk after a string of deadly rampages. It is very similar and very inspired by Wolverine's first appearance in the Incredible Hulk comic, but things goes off the rails when Weapon X shows up, turning a brutal brawl into a bloody mess involving Sabretooth, Deadpool, and more. In the second story, Loki uses magic to rip Bruce Banner from the Hulk, and sends the mindless beast straight into Asgard, forcing Thor and the gods to survive the onslaught while Bruce is stuck suffering in hell. Hulk vs. Wolverine is the stronger of the two in my opinion. It's gritty and leans into Wolverine's past and Weapon X's twisted legacy. It's fast, bloody, and Deadpool really works here. Hulk vs. Thor goes in a more tragic direction, especially with its ending. As Asgard commemorates Bruce Banner, the hero walks alone in Earth, with nowhere to go and carries the burden of being the Hulk, which adds layers to the entire tragedy of Hulk as a character. It doesn't hit quite as hard as the Wolverine one, but the mythological setting and darker tone really gives off its own vibe. Both of these are really solid films, and they get a 7.5 out of 10 for me. After being exiled from Earth by the Illuminati, Hulk crash lands on Sakaar, a brutal alien world ruled by a tyrant. Enslaved and forced to fight in gladiator arenas, he rises from warrior to a rebel leader in a fight for freedom and revenge. Planet Hulk is one of the more ambitious entries in Marvel's animated lineup. It's well-paced, very colorful, and hits all the right beats for a sci-fi gladiator story. It also has some of the best animation out of all these 8 films. Hulk's character gets a bit more depth here. He's not just smashing things, but learning, building trust, and also becoming more than just a weapon. That said, it didn't leave a huge lasting impression on me. I had a good time watching it, but it didn't really stick with me after the credits rolled. Still fun though, but Ang Lee's Hulk is still my favorite take on the character, and also this is the kind of Hulk that the MCU needs right now. The plot of this film follows a young cast of Thor-related characters, as well as Thor himself, on a magical quest with typical young adult drama and conflicts. Sadly, I'm a bit underwhelmed with this one. There are aspects of it that I like, more specifically that this film is a prequel and there's a bunch of foreshadowing of how these characters would become later on with their stories. I also think this was a fun cast of characters, even if a lot of them are one-dimensional, either to help or be a hindrance to the adventure. However, I barely remember anything from this film, but I remember the pacing being draggy even if it's only 70 minutes long. The animation was also alright, and there were some decent visuals and nice fight scenes from time to time. Overall, it's a generic tale with Thor and his friends and enemies, with a few light spots saving it from being too boring. And now that I've given my thoughts for every single one of these films, here's my ranking from worst to best. And finally, this video's over. Actually, my throat is killing me right now, but I'm very determined to put out a Marvel-related video, especially it's May, and also I really liked Thunderbolts. It inspired me to make this video and also watch a lot of Marvel movies. But anyways, thank you for watching, and see you next time.